Nobody noticed the Sheikh billionaire's mother couldn't speak until the waitress signed fluently and made her cry. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Le Jardin, casting golden patterns across the pristine white tablecloths. Emma Carter moved between tables with practiced invisibility, her black uniform blending into the shadows of Manhattan's most exclusive French restaurant. At 25, she had perfected the art of being unseen, a skill born not from choice, but from necessity. She balanced 3 plates of seared duck breast with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times before, though her hands, delicate, expressive hands that once commanded lecture halls, now simply delivered food to people who rarely looked at her face. The lunch rush was winding down, and Emma allowed herself a moment to breathe, tucking a strand of light brown hair behind her ear as she surveyed her section. That's when the atmosphere changed. The heavy oak doors swung open, and a wave of expensive cologne preceded the entrance of a man who commanded attention without saying a word. Sheikh Khalid Al-Rashid stood 6 feet 3 inches tall, his tailored charcoal Brioni suit fitting his athletic frame perfectly. His dark hair was impeccably styled, his beard trimmed with precision, and his dark brown eyes swept across the restaurant with the assessing gaze of someone accustomed to owning everything he surveyed. At 48, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had built a petroleum empire worth over $3 billion. Behind him walked 4 security personnel in dark suits, their eyes constantly scanning. But it was the woman on Khalid's arm who caught Emma's attention, an elegant lady in her early 70s, wearing a beautiful emerald silk dress and a hijab adorned with delicate embroidery. Her name was Amira Al-Rashid, and despite her regal bearing, there was something vulnerable in her eyes as she took in the bustling restaurant. Emma watched as Pierre, the head waiter, nearly tripped over himself rushing to greet them. The entire staff had frozen, conversations dying mid-sentence. Everyone knew who Sheikh Al-Rashid was. He had been featured in Forbes just last month, and his reputation for impossible standards and explosive temper preceded him. Monsieur Al-Rashid, what an honor, Pierre gushed, his French accent thickening with nervousness. Your usual table by the window, yes? We have prepared everything exactly as you requested. Khalid gave a curt nod, his hand gently guiding his mother toward the secluded corner table that offered both privacy and a stunning view of Central Park. Emma noticed how tenderly he held her arm, how his entire demeanor softened when he looked at her. It was the first crack in his intimidating facade. As they settled into their seats, Emma observed from her station near the kitchen. Pierre presented the menus with flourish, launching into his rehearsed description of the day's specials in rapid French. Khalid listened with barely concealed impatience, but his mother sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes distant. "Mother, would you like to start with the lobster bisque?" Khalid asked in English, his voice deep and accented with the musical quality of Arabic influence. Amira turned to look at him, and Emma saw it, the slight confusion, the way her eyes searched his face, trying to read his lips. The older woman's hands moved slightly, an aborted gesture before she simply nodded with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Pierre continued talking, oblivious. "And for Madame, perhaps she'll have the same as me," Khalid interrupted sharply, a flash of something frustration, protectiveness crossing his features. Emma's heart clenched. She recognized that look, that gesture. She had seen it 100 times during her research at Columbia, during the countless hours she had spent in the deaf community, learning, connecting, understanding. Amira wasn't just quiet or shy. She was deaf, and no one else had noticed. Pierre retreated with their order, and Emma watched as Khalid tried to communicate with his mother, speaking slowly, exaggerating his lip movements. Amira nodded along, but Emma could see the isolation settling over her like a fog. In a restaurant full of conversation and laughter, she was completely alone. The other waitstaff gave the table a wide berth. Michael, who usually handled that section, looked panicked. "I can't deal with them," he whispered to Emma as he passed. "The guy looks like he'll fire me just for breathing wrong, and his mother—" "I don't know how to—" "She doesn't talk." Emma's fingers tingled. It had been 3 years since she had used ASL for anything meaningful. 3 years since she had allowed herself to be anything other than invisible. 3 years since Dr. Marcus Whitmore had stolen her research, her reputation, and her future, leaving her with nothing but shame and silence. But watching Amira sit there, trapped in her own silence, while her son tried desperately to make her comfortable, Emma felt something crack inside her carefully constructed walls. Before she could talk herself out of it, she picked up a water pitcher and walked toward their table. Her heart hammered against her ribs with each step. Khalid's security detail tracked her movement, hands moving subtly toward their jackets. She was acutely aware of how she must look, just another waitress. Insignificant, forgettable. "Excuse me," she said softly as she approached, her voice steadier than she felt. Khalid's head snapped up, his dark eyes fixing on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Up close he was even more imposing, all sharp angles and controlled power. "Yes?" His tone was clipped, dismissive. Emma's courage nearly failed her. But then she looked at Amira and saw the older woman's kind eyes watching her with polite curiosity. Emma set down the water pitcher and did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She raised her hands and began to sign. Her fingers moved with fluid grace, forming the shapes and movements of American Sign Language. "Good afternoon," she signed, her face expressing the warmth that her hands conveyed. "My name is Emma. It's a pleasure to meet you." The effect was instantaneous and electric. Amira's eyes widened, her mouth forming a perfect O of shock. For a moment she simply stared, as if unable to believe what she was seeing. Then her hands flew up, trembling slightly, signing back with desperate speed. "You can sign? You understand me?" "Yes," Emma signed, a genuine smile breaking across her face. "I understand you perfectly." Tears spilled down Amira's cheeks without warning. Her hands moved frantically, signing so fast that Emma had to concentrate to keep up. "No one has spoken to me in days. My son tries, but it's so hard. I've been so lonely. You have no idea what this means." Emma's own eyes burned with tears. She pulled out her notepad and pen, setting them aside as she continued to sign. "You're not alone now. I'm here. What would you like for lunch? Tell me everything you want and I'll make sure you get it." Khalid had gone completely still. Emma could feel his stare boring into her, but she kept her focus on Amira, who was now smiling through her tears, her hands moving with increasing confidence and joy. "How do you know ASL?" Amira signed. "Are you deaf?" "No," Emma signed back. "But I studied linguistics and communication. I learned ASL because I believe everyone deserves to be heard in whatever language they speak." Amira reached out and grasped Emma's hand, squeezing it tightly. The older woman's lips moved, forming words in Arabic that Emma didn't understand. But the gratitude in her eyes transcended language. "What is happening?" Khalid's voice cut through the moment, sharp and demanding. "What are you doing?" Emma turned to face him, suddenly aware of how this must look. A waitress crying with his mother holding her hand. She quickly wiped her eyes and straightened, slipping back into her professional demeanor. "I'm sorry, sir. I noticed that your mother communicates through sign language. I wanted to make sure she felt welcome and could order exactly what she'd like." Emma's voice was quiet but steady. Khalid stared at her as if she had just materialized from thin air. "You know sign language?" It wasn't a question but a statement laden with disbelief. "Yes, sir. American Sign Language, well, how?" The single word carried the weight of 1,000 questions. Emma hesitated. This was dangerous territory. Talking about herself, her past, her education. She had spent 3 years avoiding these conversations. I studied it in university. Linguistics." Khalid's eyes narrowed, his analytical mind clearly working through this information. A waitress with a linguistics degree who was fluent in ASL? It didn't add up, and he was a man who needed things to add up. But before he could interrogate her further, Amira's hands moved, signing to her son. Emma watched as Khalid's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion. He clearly didn't understand what his mother was saying. "She wants me to translate," Emma said softly. "She says that you've been trying so hard to take care of her during this trip, but she's been feeling very isolated. She's grateful that you brought her to America, but she's been lonely because no one here can communicate with her. She says I'm the first person in New York who has spoken her language." Khalid's jaw tightened, and Emma saw a flash of pain cross his features before his mask of control slammed back into place. "Tell her," he paused, seeming to struggle with words. "Tell her that I didn't know. I should have hired an interpreter. I should have thought of that. Emma signed his message and Amira shook her head, signing back rapidly. She says you're a good son and she doesn't blame you. She knows you're busy with your business meetings. She's just happy to have this moment of connection. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Khalid had looked at his mother with such raw love and frustration that Emma had to look away, feeling like an intruder on something private. What's your name? Khalid asked suddenly. Emma Carter, sir. Emma Carter. He repeated it slowly as if committing it to memory. You will be our server for the duration of our meal. In fact, you will be our server every time we come to this restaurant. I will speak to your manager. That's not necessary, sir. I'm happy to help. It's not a request. His tone brooked no argument. My mother's comfort is worth more than any amount of money. You've given her something I couldn't. The ability to be heard. That makes you valuable. The word valuable hit Emma like a physical blow. Once she had been valuable. A promising researcher, a brilliant mind, someone with a future. Now she was valuable because she could serve a billionaire's mother. The irony was almost too bitter to bear, but she simply nodded. Of course, sir. I'd be honored. Amira signed something else, and Emma couldn't help but smile at the message. What did she say? Khalid demanded. She says I have kind eyes. And she wants to know if I'm single, because she thinks you need a wife who is intelligent and compassionate. For the first time, Emma saw Sheikh Khalid Al-Rashid look genuinely flustered. A hint of color touched his cheeks, and he shot his mother a look that was pure exasperation. Mother! Amira signed something that made Emma laugh. A real, genuine laugh that surprised her with its lightness. She says she's old, and she wants grandchildren before she dies, so she's going to be very direct about these things. Despite himself, Khalid's lips twitched. Tell her she's incorrigible. She says she knows, and that's why you love her. The moment hung between them, Emma, the invisible waitress with a secret past. Khalid, the powerful billionaire who had just watched a stranger give his mother a gift he couldn't. And Amira, the bridge between two worlds, already plotting with the romantic optimism of a mother who saw possibilities everywhere. Emma took their order, signing every detail to Amira, who beamed with joy at being able to choose exactly what she wanted. The seared scallops with saffron risotto, a side of roasted asparagus, and the chocolate soufflé for dessert. Khalid ordered without looking at the menu, his eyes never leaving Emma's face, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. As Emma walked back to the kitchen, she could feel his gaze following her. She had just made herself visible to one of the most powerful men in New York, and she had no idea if that was the best decision she'd ever made or the worst. What she didn't know was that Khalid Al-Rashid was already pulling out his phone, typing a message to his head of security. I need a complete background check on Emma Carter, waitress at Le Jardin. I want to know everything about her by tonight, because in his experience, people with hidden talents always had hidden stories, and Khalid Al-Rashid made it his business to uncover every secret. The question was, what would he do when he discovered hers? Over the next week, Khalid returned to Le Jardin every single day, always with his mother, always requesting Emma's section. The staff whispered about it, the mysterious connection between the billionaire sheikh and the quiet waitress, who suddenly seemed indispensable. Emma found herself caught in a strange new routine. Each afternoon she would watch the doors, her heart rate picking up when Khalid and Amira arrived. The older woman would light up the moment she saw Emma, her hands already moving in greeting before she even reached the table. Their conversations grew longer and deeper. Amira told Emma about her life in Dubai, about losing her hearing to illness when she was 30, about the isolation she sometimes felt, even surrounded by family who loved her, but couldn't always understand her. Emma shared carefully edited pieces of her own life, her love of languages, her fascination with communication, her belief that everyone deserved to be heard. What she didn't share was the truth, that she had once been Dr. Emma Carter, rising star in the linguistics department at Columbia University, that her doctoral research on automated sign language translation had been groundbreaking, that she had been engaged to Dr. Marcus Whitmore, her research partner, who had smiled at her across the lab bench while secretly copying her work, stealing her algorithms, and preparing to publish everything under his own name. She didn't talk about the day she discovered the betrayal, finding the submitted manuscript on his computer, seeing her words, her ideas, her years of work attributed solely to him. She didn't describe the confrontation, his cold justification. "You're brilliant, Emma, but you're too soft. The academic world would eat you alive. I'm doing us both a favor. My name carries weight, yours doesn't." And she certainly didn't mention the aftermath, how Marcus had preemptively accused her of plagiarism, how his connections in the department had believed him over her, how she'd lost her position, her reputation, and her entire future in a matter of months, how she'd spent every penny she had on lawyers who ultimately couldn't prove what she knew in her heart, that the work was hers. 3 years later, Marcus was a tenured professor, celebrated for his revolutionary research, and Emma served French onion soup to people who never looked at her twice, except Khalid looked at her, all the time. She felt his dark eyes tracking her movements, studying her with an intensity that made her nervous. He asked questions, casual ones at first. Where did she study? What made her interested in linguistics? Did she have family in New York? Emma deflected with practiced ease, keeping her answers vague, steering conversations back to Amira. But she could see the frustration building in Khalid's expression. He was a man used to getting answers, and she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. On the 8th day, everything changed. Emma was setting down Amira's favorite mint tea when Khalid's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his entire body went rigid. His jaw clenched, and when he looked up at Emma, there was something new in his eyes. Knowledge, and beneath it anger. "Emma," he said quietly, "I need to speak with you privately." Her blood ran cold. "Sir, I'm working now." It wasn't a request. Amira looked between them, confused, her hands moving in question. Emma signed quickly, "I'll be right back," and followed Khalid to a quiet corner near the wine cellar, her heart pounding. He turned to face her, and the full force of his attention was overwhelming. "Dr. Emma Carter," he said softly, "Columbia University. Doctoral degree in computational linguistics, with a specialization in sign language translation. Published 3 papers before the age of 24. Engaged to Dr. Marcus Whitmore." And then, he paused, his eyes searching her face. "Nothing. You disappeared. No more publications, no more academic presence, just gone." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "You investigated me." "Of course I did. You're fluent in ASL, clearly overqualified to be a waitress, and you're hiding something. I don't like mysteries, especially not around my mother." His voice was hard, but there was something else there too, curiosity, maybe even concern. "What happened, Emma? Why is a brilliant linguist serving tables?" She wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to make an excuse and disappear. But she was so tired of running, so tired of hiding, and something about the way he was looking at her, not with pity but with genuine demand for the truth, made her walls crack. "Marcus happened," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Marcus Whitmore happened." Khalid waited silent, giving her space to continue. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. She told him everything, the years of research, the partnership she thought was built on love and mutual respect, the theft, the betrayal, the accusations, how Marcus had used his family connections and his reputation to destroy hers, how she'd fought and lost everything. "I had nothing left," Emma said, her voice cracking. "No job, no money, no reputation. Everyone in the academic world believed I was the plagiarist, so I disappeared. I became invisible. It was easier than fighting a battle I'd already lost." When she finished, silence hung heavy between them. Emma couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see judgment or pity in his eyes. "Do you have proof?" Khalid asked finally. "Any evidence that the work was yours?" "I had drafts, notes, emails. My lawyers said it wasn't enough." Marcus was careful. He made sure everything looked like collaboration, and then he claimed I was trying to take sole credit for joint work. His word against mine, and his word carried more weight. Khalid was quiet for a long moment. When Emma finally dared to look up, she was shocked by the cold fury in his expression. "I've built an empire by recognizing talent and destroying those who try to steal from me," he said quietly. "I know a thief when I see one, and I know brilliance when I see it. You are brilliant, Emma Carter, and Marcus Whitmore is a thief." "It doesn't matter anymore," Emma said tiredly. "It's been 3 years. I've moved on." "Have you?" Khalid stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Because from where I stand, you've buried yourself alive. You're hiding your light, your intelligence, your gifts. That's not moving on. That's surrender." His words hit like physical blows. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "What else was I supposed to do? I fought, I lost. That's the end of the story." "No," Khalid said firmly. "That's not the end. That's just the end of the chapter you wrote alone." He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "I'm going to make some calls. I have lawyers who specialize in intellectual property theft. I have investigators who can find evidence that your lawyers missed. I have resources." "No," Emma's voice was sharp. "Thank you, but no. I don't need your charity or your pity." Khalid's eyes flashed. "This isn't charity. This is justice. And it's not pity. It's recognition of worth. You gave my mother something priceless. Let me give you something in return." "I don't want anything from you," Emma said, even as her heart screamed the opposite. "I just want to be left alone." Too late. Khalid's smile was sharp and dangerous. "You made yourself visible, Emma. You showed me who you really are. And I don't forget. And I don't let go of things that matter." Before Emma could respond, Amira appeared, her face creased with worry. She signed rapidly, asking what was wrong, why Emma looked upset. Emma forced a smile and signed back, "Everything is fine. Just discussing the menu." But Amira wasn't fooled. She looked at her son, then back at Emma, and signed something that made Emma's breath catch. "What did she say?" Khalid demanded. Emma hesitated, then translated. "She says that you have the same look in your eyes that you get when you're about to go to war for something you believe in. She wants to know what you're fighting for." Khalid looked at his mother, then at Emma, and said something in Arabic that Emma didn't understand. But Amira's expression softened and she signed to Emma. "He says he's fighting for justice, and for you." The weight of those words settled over Emma like a blanket, terrifying and comforting all at once. She wanted to protest, to push him away, to retreat back into her safe invisibility. But a small buried part of her, the part that had once believed she could change the world with her research, whispered a dangerous question. What if he could actually help? What if this wasn't the end of her story? What if she could fight back? Emma didn't see Khalid or Amira for 3 days after that conversation, and she told herself she was relieved. She went back to her routine, serving tables, being invisible, keeping her head down. But the restaurant felt emptier without Amira's warm smile and flying hands, without Khalid's intense presence. On the 4th day, Pierre approached her during the lunch rush, looking nervous. "Emma, there's someone here to see you." "He's waiting in the private dining room." Her heart jumped. "Who?" "Sheikh Al-Rashid. He says it's urgent." Emma's hands trembled as she untied her apron. She found Khalid standing by the window, looking out at Central Park, his posture rigid with tension. When he turned, she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch, triumph mixed with barely controlled rage. "I found him," Khalid said without preamble. "Dr. Marcus Whitmore. And I found something else too." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder, setting it on the table between them. "My investigators are very good at their job. They accessed university servers, recovered deleted emails, found backup files that your ex-fiancée thought were gone forever." He opened the folder, revealing page after page of documents. "This is your research, Emma. Your original drafts dated and time-stamped. Your handwritten notes from the lab. Female chains where Marcus specifically asks you for sections of the algorithm, where you explain your methodology to him." Emma's hands shook as she reached for the papers. She recognized her own handwriting, her own words. Tears blurred her vision as she flipped through page after page of evidence, proof that she had been telling the truth all along. "There's more," Khalid continued, his voice hard. "We found 3 other researchers who Marcus has stolen from over the years. Smaller thefts. Nothing as significant as yours, but a pattern of behavior. They were too afraid to come forward because of his reputation. But they'll testify now. Together you have a case that's airtight." Emma looked up at him, unable to speak. The hope rising in her chest was so painful, it felt like drowning. "I've already contacted Columbia University's board of directors," Khalid said. "They're opening an investigation. I've also retained the best intellectual property lawyers in New York. They're prepared to file both criminal charges for fraud and civil charges for damages." He paused, his dark eyes intense. "But I need your permission, Emma. I won't do this without your consent. This is your fight. I'm just offering you the weapons." "Why?" Emma whispered. "Why are you doing this for me?" Khalid was silent for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Because my mother hasn't smiled like she smiles with you in years. Because you gave her a gift without expecting anything in return. Because I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who want something from me, and you're the first person who asked for nothing." He stepped closer. "And because watching brilliant people be crushed by mediocre thieves offends me on a fundamental level." Emma felt tears streaming down her face. For 3 years she had carried the weight of injustice alone, had believed that no one would ever believe her, that Marcus had won forever. And now this man, this powerful, arrogant, impossible man, was offering her a chance at redemption. "If we do this," she said shakily, "Marcus will fight back. He'll try to destroy me again. Let him try." Khalid's smile was cold and dangerous. "I've destroyed men far more powerful than Marcus Whitmore. He's nothing. You're everything." The certainty in his voice made something crack open inside Emma's chest, something that had been frozen for 3 years. Hope, rage, the desire for justice. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's do it." Khalid's expression transformed, satisfaction and something warmer flooding his features. "Good, we start tomorrow. My lawyers will meet with you to prepare your statement. The university board meeting is in 1 week. And Emma?" He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. "You're not alone in this anymore. I promise you that." Emma leaned into his touch for just a moment, letting herself feel protected, supported, believed. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Khalid said. "Thank me when Marcus Whitmore is ruined, and you're back where you belong, changing the world with your brilliant mind." As Emma left the private dining room, she felt different, lighter, like she'd been carrying a boulder on her back and someone had finally helped her set it down. She didn't know what would happen next, didn't know if they could really win against Marcus and his powerful connections. But for the first time in 3 years, she believed it was possible. What she didn't know was that Marcus Whitmore had just received a very interesting phone call from a colleague who had seen Khalid's investigators asking questions. And Marcus, who had spent 3 years confident that Emma was too broken to ever fight back, was about to make a very big mistake. He was about to underestimate her one more time. The next week passed in a blur of lawyers, depositions, and evidence review. Emma spent her days at the offices of Khalid's legal team, a floor of intimidating attorneys in a glass tower overlooking Manhattan. They treated her research with reverence, calling it groundbreaking and revolutionary. Words she hadn't heard applied to her work in 3 years. Khalid was there for every meeting, sitting beside her, his presence a solid anchor. He asked sharp questions, demanded clarity, and made it clear that failure was not an option. Emma watched him work with fascination. This was Khalid in his element, commanding and strategic, a general preparing for war. Amira came too, sitting quietly and signing encouragement to Emma during breaks. The older woman had become a fierce ally, her maternal instincts fully engaged. She brought Emma tea, squeezed her hand during difficult moments, and once signed something that made Emma laugh through her tears. "My son is very bossy, but his heart is good. Let him fight for you." On the 6th day, the university's board of directors agreed to an emergency meeting. Marcus would be there along with his lawyers. Emma would present her evidence and her case. The board would make a preliminary decision about whether to proceed with a full investigation. The night before the meeting, Emma couldn't sleep. She sat in her tiny studio apartment, surrounded by the evidence that proved her innocence, and felt terror clawing at her throat. What if it wasn't enough? What if they still didn't believe her? What if Marcus found a way to twist the truth again? Her phone buzzed at midnight. A text from Khalid. "Can't sleep either. Come downstairs." Emma looked out her window and saw a black Mercedes idling at the curb. Against her better judgment, she grabbed her coat and went down. Khalid was leaning against the car, looking impossibly elegant even in casual clothes, dark jeans and a black sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders. "Get in," he said. "I want to show you something." They drove through the empty streets of Manhattan, the city glittering around them like a jewel box. Emma didn't ask where they were going. just watched the lights blur past, feeling the tension slowly ease from her shoulders. Khalid pulled up to Columbia University's campus. Emma's breath caught. She hadn't been back here in 3 years, had avoided this part of the city like it was cursed ground. "Come on," Khalid said, getting out of the car. He led her through the quiet campus to the linguistics building. Using a key card that Emma didn't ask about, he let them into the building and up to the 4th floor. They stopped in front of a door with a nameplate, Dr. Marcus Whitmore, Department Chair. "What are we doing here?" Emma whispered. Khalid pulled out his phone and showed her a photo, Marcus's office taken by his investigators. On the wall behind the desk hung framed awards and certificates, and there, prominently displayed, was the publication that had made Marcus famous, the research paper that was entirely Emma's work. "Tomorrow, you're going to walk into that board meeting, and you're going to take back what's yours," Khalid said quietly. "You're going to stand in front of the people who doubted you and prove them wrong. And when it's over, that paper will have your name on it, not his." Emma stared at the door, feeling 3 years of pain and anger crystallizing into something harder, stronger. "Determination. I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Fear means you care. Fear means it matters." Khalid turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "But don't let fear make you small, Emma. You are brilliant." "You are right. And tomorrow everyone is going to see what I see. A woman who is extraordinary." In the dim hallway light, with the ghost of her past surrounding them, Emma looked up at this man who had crashed into her life and refused to let her hide. "Why do you believe in me so much?" Khalid's expression softened. "Because my mother is the smartest, strongest woman I know, and she spent most of her life being underestimated because she can't speak. I watched her be dismissed, ignored, treated as less than, and then you walked up to our table and saw her, really saw her in seconds. You didn't see a disability. You saw a person who deserved to be heard." His thumb brushed her cheek. "Anyone who can see that clearly, who can connect that deeply, is someone worth fighting for." Emma's heart was pounding. They were standing too close, the air between them charged with something that had been building for weeks. She should step back, maintain professional distance, remember that he was a billionaire sheikh, and she was a waitress with a destroyed reputation. But instead, she leaned forward and Khalid met her halfway. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a question. Then Khalid's hand slid into her hair, and Emma's fingers gripped his sweater, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and real. 3 years of loneliness, of feeling invisible and worthless, melted away under the heat of his mouth, the solid strength of his body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Khalid rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow we destroy him," he whispered, "and then we figure out what this is between us. What if we lose?" Emma asked. "We won't. But if we do, I'll buy the entire university and fire everyone who doubted you." Emma laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. "That's not how academic integrity works." "Then it's a good thing I'm a businessman, not an academic." Khalid kissed her again, softer this time. "Go home, get some sleep. Tomorrow you take back your life." As Emma lay in bed an hour later, her lips still tingling from Khalid's kiss, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years, excitement for the future. Whatever happened tomorrow, she wasn't alone anymore. She had allies, evidence, and a billionaire sheikh who kissed like he did everything else, with absolute confidence and devastating effectiveness. Marcus. Whitmore had no idea what was about to hit him. The Columbia University boardroom was exactly as Emma remembered. Dark wood paneling, a long mahogany table, and portraits of distinguished professors lining the walls. She sat between Khalid and his lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, who had assured Emma that their case was bulletproof. Across the table sat Marcus Whitmore, and seeing him again after 3 years was like being punched in the stomach. He looked exactly the same. Sandy blonde hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the same tweed jacket he'd always favored. He'd aged well, looked successful and confident. Next to him sat his fiancée, a young assistant professor named Dr. Sarah Mitchell, who kept shooting Emma hostile glances. The board members filed in, 7 professors and administrators who would decide Emma's fate. Dean Richardson, who had refused to hear Emma's appeals 3 years ago, sat at the head of the table looking distinctly uncomfortable. "This is highly irregular," Marcus said before anyone else could speak, his voice carrying the condescending tone Emma remembered too well. I don't understand why we're here. This matter was settled 3 years ago. Ms. Carter made accusations that were thoroughly investigated and found to be baseless. Dr. Carter, Khalid corrected coldly. She has a doctorate, which you seem to have forgotten. Marcus's eyes flickered to Khalid with barely concealed disdain. And you are? Sheikh Khalid Al-Rashid. I'm here as Dr. Carter's advocate and the person who funded the investigation that uncovered your fraud. The word fraud hung in the air like a bomb. Marcus's face flushed. How dare you? Gentlemen, please, Dean Richardson interrupted. Let's proceed in an orderly fashion. Ms. Dr. Carter, you've requested this meeting to present new evidence regarding the authorship of the paper Automated Translation Systems for American Sign Language, a Quantum Computing Approach, published under Dr. Whitmore's name 3 years ago. Please present your case. Patricia Chen stood, her voice crisp and professional. Thank you, Dean Richardson. We have substantial new evidence that proves definitively that this research was conducted solely by Dr. Emma Carter, and that Dr. Marcus Whitmore engaged in systematic theft of intellectual property, followed by a coordinated campaign to destroy Dr. Carter's reputation when she discovered the theft. She began distributing folders to each board member. In these folders you'll find original research notes in Dr. Carter's handwriting, dated 2 years before the publication, email correspondence where Dr. Whitmore specifically requests sections of the algorithm from Dr. Carter, demonstrating that he did not develop these concepts independently. Time-stamped computer files from the university server, showing that Dr. Carter created and modified the core documents, and testimony from 3 other researchers who have experienced similar theft by Dr. Whitmore. Emma watched the board members' faces as they opened the folders. She saw surprise, then concern, then growing anger as they reviewed the evidence. Marcus had gone pale. This is ridiculous. Emma and I worked together. Of course, there are emails and shared files. That's how collaboration works. She's twisting normal academic partnership into something sinister because she's bitter that I ended our engagement. Is that why you deleted these emails from your account? Patricia asked smoothly. If this was normal collaboration, why did you attempt to destroy the evidence? I didn't delete anything. I simply cleaned out old files. On the same day that Dr. Carter filed her initial complaint with the university, Patricia's smile was sharp. Interesting timing. Emma found her voice, surprised by how steady it was. Marcus, I have my original handwritten notes from 2 years before you published. I have the algorithm development in my handwriting. I have emails where you asked me to explain concepts to you because you didn't understand them. You didn't collaborate with me. You stole from me. You're delusional, Marcus snapped, his composure cracking. You were a mediocre researcher who got lucky with one good idea. I took that idea and made it into something publishable. You should be thanking me. There it is, Khalid said softly. You just admitted it. She had the idea. You took it. Marcus realized his mistake, his mouth snapping shut. His lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently in his ear. Dean Richardson was reading through the evidence, his expression growing darker. Dr. Whitmore, these notes are quite detailed. Can you explain why Dr. Carter would have such extensive documentation of algorithm development if she wasn't the primary researcher? We worked together. She probably kept notes on our joint work. These notes reference concepts that don't appear in your published paper until months later, another board member interjected. How did she predict your research direction if she wasn't driving it? Marcus was sweating now. I don't know. Maybe she's forged them. She's clearly obsessed with destroying me. The documents have been verified by forensic analysts, Patricia said. The paper, ink, and aging are all consistent with the dates written on them. They're authentic. Emma watched Marcus's world crumble in real time. His confidence evaporated, replaced by panic and anger. This was the man she'd loved, the man she'd trusted with her work and her heart. And he was exactly as pathetic as she'd always feared. You know what the worst part is, Marcus? Emma said quietly. It's not that you stole my work. It's that you made me doubt myself. For 3 years I believed that maybe I was wrong, maybe I was crazy, maybe I didn't deserve to be in academia. You took my research and my confidence, but I'm taking them both back. This is absurd. Sarah, Marcus's fiancée, burst out. Marcus is a respected researcher. He's published dozens of papers, has he? Khalid pulled out another folder. Because my investigators found some interesting patterns. Dr. Whitmore's publication record shows a dramatic increase in output after he started working with Dr. Carter. Before her, he averaged 1 paper every 2 years. During their partnership, he published 6 papers in 3 years. And after she left, his output dropped again. Interesting, isn't it? The board members were now looking at Marcus with open suspicion. Dean Richardson cleared his throat. Dr. Whitmore, this evidence is quite compelling. Do you have any documentation that proves your contribution to this research? Original notes, drafts, anything that shows your work on the algorithm development? Marcus's silence was damning. I thought not, Dean Richardson said heavily. This board will need to deliberate, but I think it's clear that a full investigation is warranted. Dr. Whitmore, you are suspended from your position effective immediately, pending the outcome of this investigation. Dr. Carter, on behalf of Columbia University, I apologize for not taking your initial claims more seriously. We failed you, and that failure will be addressed. Emma felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of relief, of vindication, of 3 years of pain finally being acknowledged. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. This is a witch hunt. You're all going to regret this. I have connections, I have lawyers. So do I, Khalid said pleasantly. Much better ones. And unlike you, I don't need to steal other people's work to be successful. I suggest you leave before I have security escort you out. Marcus looked at Emma one last time, and she saw hatred in his eyes. You've ruined me, he said. No, Emma replied. You ruined yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. As Marcus stormed out, Sarah following behind him, Emma felt Khalid's hand close around hers under the table. She squeezed back, grounding herself in his solid presence. The board meeting continued for another hour, with Patricia outlining the next steps: a formal investigation, the retraction of Marcus's paper, the republication under Emma's name, and potential criminal charges for fraud. Through it all, Emma felt like she was floating, unable to quite believe that this was real. When they finally left the building, stepping out into the bright afternoon sunlight, Emma turned to Khalid and burst into tears. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly while she sobbed against his chest. 3 years of pain and anger and relief pouring out all at once. You did it, he murmured into her hair. You were magnificent. We did it, Emma corrected, pulling back to look at him. I couldn't have done this without you. Khalid cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. You could have. You just needed someone to believe in you enough to give you the tools. The courage was always yours, Emma. He kissed her then, right there on the steps of Columbia University, in front of students and professors and anyone who cared to watch. And Emma kissed him back, pouring 3 years of gratitude and hope and growing love into the embrace. When they broke apart, Emma saw Amira standing by Khalid's car, beaming at them. The older woman signed rapidly, and Emma laughed through her tears. What did she say? Khalid asked. She says she told you I was perfect for you, and you should have listened to her from the beginning. Also, she wants to know when the wedding is. Khalid groaned. Mother, we've known each other for 2 weeks. Amira signed something else, and Emma translated. She says when you know, you know. And she knows. Khalid looked at Emma, his dark eyes intense and warm. She might have a point. Emma's heart skipped. Khalid, I'm not proposing, he said quickly. Not yet. But Emma, I haven't felt this way about anyone in my entire life. You're brilliant, compassionate, strong, and you make my mother happier than I've seen her in years. I want to see where this goes. I want to be there when you reclaim your career, when you publish your research, when you change the world. I want to be the person who stands beside you and reminds you how extraordinary you are. Emma felt more tears threatening. I'm a mess. I'm broken and scared and I don't know how to trust anymore. Then I'll wait until you remember how. I'm a patient man when something matters. Khalid smiled. Besides, my mother has already decided you're going to be her daughter-in-law. Do you have any idea how stubborn she is? You might as well give in now. Emma laughed, the sound watery but genuine. I think I need to take things slow. Rebuild my life. Figure out who I am now. Good, I'll be right here while you do. Khalid kissed her forehead. Now my mother insists on taking you to dinner to celebrate. She's already made reservations at her favorite restaurant. And before you argue, she's already ordered for you in sign language, so you have to come." Emma looked at Amira, who was signing enthusiastically about champagne and dessert and celebration. She looked at Khalid, who was watching her with such warmth and pride that it made her chest ache. And she thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago, broken, alone, convinced her life was over. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who had fought back, who had won, who had found allies and love in the most unexpected places. "Okay," Emma said. "Let's celebrate." As they drove through Manhattan, Amira chattering in sign language about wedding plans that were definitely premature, Khalid holding Emma's hand like he'd never let go. Emma felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt like herself again, and it was just the beginning. 3 months later, Emma stood in front of a lecture hall at Columbia University, looking out at 200 students who were waiting to hear her speak. She wore a professional navy suit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, and on the screen behind her was the title of her presentation, Automated Translation Systems for American Sign Language, a Quantum Computing Approach, by Dr. Emma Carter. Her paper had been republished under her name. Marcus had been fired and was facing criminal charges. The university had offered Emma a position as an associate professor with a formal apology and a research grant to continue her work. And today was her first lecture. She was terrified. In the front row sat Khalid and Amira. Khalid gave her an encouraging nod, and Amira signed, "You're going to be amazing." Emma took a deep breath and began, "Good morning. My name is Dr. Emma Carter, and I'm here to talk to you about the power of communication, the importance of being heard, and what happens when we create technology that bridges the gap between different languages and different ways of experiencing the world." As she spoke, her confidence grew. This was what she was meant to do: teach, research, make a difference. The students were engaged, asking smart questions, and Emma felt the joy of academic discourse that she thought she'd lost forever. After the lecture, students crowded around her, wanting to discuss her research, asking about opportunities to work in her lab. Emma answered their questions, feeling more alive than she had in years. When the last student left, Khalid approached with Amira. "You were brilliant," he said, pride evident in his voice. Amira signed rapidly, and Emma laughed. "She says I talk too fast and use too many big words, but she's very proud of me anyway." "She's not the only one," Khalid said softly. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Emma's breath caught. "Khalid, what are you—" "Relax, it's not what you think." "Not yet." He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a pendant shaped like a hand, forming the sign for love in ASL. "I had this made for you, to remind you that you are loved, you are heard, and you are exactly where you're supposed to be." Emma's eyes filled with tears as Khalid fastened the necklace around her neck. "It's perfect. You're perfect," Khalid corrected. He glanced at his mother, who was pointedly looking away and signing to herself about how patient she was being. "Although I should warn you, my mother is getting impatient. She started looking at wedding venues." Emma laughed. "We've only been dating for 3 months." "I know. I keep telling her that. But she says she's old and wants to see grandchildren before she dies, and apparently I'm moving too slowly." Emma looked at this man who had crashed into her life and refused to let her hide, who had fought for her, believed in her, and loved her with a fierce protectiveness that still took her breath away. "What do you think?" she asked softly. "Are you moving too slowly?" Khalid's eyes darkened. "I think I knew you were extraordinary the moment you signed to my mother and made her cry. I think I started falling for you when you refused my help because you were too proud to accept charity. And I think I fell completely in love with you when you stood in that boardroom and took back your life with such courage and grace." He cupped her face in his hands. "So no, I don't think I'm moving too slowly. I think I'm moving at exactly the right pace for you to feel safe and sure. But Emma, I want you to know, I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, I'll be here." Emma kissed him, pouring all her gratitude and growing love into the embrace. When they broke apart, she saw Amira watching them with tears in her eyes, signing, "Finally." "Your mother is very dramatic," Emma said. "She learned from the best," Khalid replied, pulling Emma close. "So, Dr. Carter, what's next? More research? More lectures? World domination through linguistic innovation? Emma laughed. All of the above. I have 3 graduate students starting next semester, a grant proposal to write and a paper to finish. Plus, I promised Amira I'd teach her some advanced ASL idioms. And us? Khalid asked quietly. What about us? Emma looked up at him, this powerful, arrogant, impossible man who had seen her when she was invisible, who had fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself, who had loved her back to life. Us, she said softly, is the best research project I've ever undertaken, and I can't wait to see where it leads. Khalid smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. I love you, Emma Carter. I love you too. Khalid Al-Rashid. Amira signed something enthusiastic, and both Emma and Khalid laughed. She says she's calling the wedding planner tomorrow, Emma translated. Of course she is, Khalid sighed. I suppose we should start looking at rings. Emma's heart skipped. Are you serious? I'm always serious about things that matter. And you, Dr. Carter, matter more than anything. He kissed her forehead. But we'll take our time. Let you finish your semester, publish your research, conquer the academic world, and then when you're ready, I'm going to ask you properly, with a ring that's worthy of you, and a proposal that makes you cry happy tears. I'm already crying, Emma said, wiping her eyes. Then I'm doing something right. As they left the lecture hall, Amira walking ahead and already signing about flower arrangements, Emma felt the last piece of her broken heart click back into place. She had her career back, her reputation restored, her research recognized. But more than that, she had found family. Amira, who loved her like a daughter, and Khalid, who loved her like she'd always dreamed of being loved. 3 years ago, Marcus Whitmore had stolen her work and tried to destroy her. He had succeeded in breaking her, in making her invisible, in convincing her that she was worthless. But he had failed in the most important way. He hadn't destroyed her spirit. It had just been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake up, and when it did, when Emma finally allowed herself to be seen again, she discovered something Marcus could never understand, that true brilliance can't be stolen, true strength can't be broken, and true love sees you exactly as you are, and chooses you anyway. As they stepped out into the bright New York afternoon, Khalid's arm around her waist and Amira signing excitedly about the future, Emma smiled. She was Dr. Emma Carter, brilliant researcher, dedicated teacher, fluent signer, and the woman who had taken back her life, and she was just getting started. 6 months later, Emma stood in front of Amira in a private suite at the Plaza Hotel, staring at her reflection in disbelief. The wedding dress was a masterpiece, ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves, fitted perfectly to her figure. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and around her neck was the ASL love pendant Khalid had given her. Amira stood beside her, tears streaming down her face, signing, "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen. My son is the luckiest man alive." Emma signed back, "I'm the lucky one. You gave me a family when I thought I'd lost everything." The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Emma's research had been featured in 3 major journals. She'd been invited to speak at conferences around the world. Her lab at Columbia was thriving, with 5 graduate students working on projects that would revolutionize sign language translation technology. She'd even been approached about consulting for a tech company developing AI-powered accessibility tools. But the best part had been watching her relationship with Khalid deepen. They'd navigated the challenges of his business travel and her academic schedule. They'd had their first fight, about whether Emma was working too hard, and their first makeup, which involved Khalid surprising her with a weekend trip to Dubai to meet the rest of his family. They'd learned each other's rhythms, quirks, and dreams, and 3 months ago Khalid had proposed, not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet moment in Emma's lab late at night. He'd found her hunched over her computer, working on a particularly difficult algorithm, and had simply knelt beside her chair and said, "Marry me. Build a life with me. Let me spend every day reminding you how extraordinary you are." Emma had said yes before he'd even finished pulling out the ring, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, the same color as the dress Amira had worn the first day they met. Now, as Emma prepared to walk down the aisle, she felt a moment of pure, overwhelming gratitude. For Amira, who had become the mother she'd always wanted. For Khalid, who had fought for her and loved her with unwavering devotion. For the second chance she'd been given to reclaim her life and her dreams. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Patricia Chen, who had become a good friend, poked her head in. "It's time. And Emma? Khalid looks like he's about to pass out from anticipation. I've never seen him nervous before." "It's actually kind of adorable," Emma laughed, her heart swelling. She took Amira's hand, squeezed it tightly and signed, "Let's go get me married." The ceremony was held in the plaza's grand ballroom, decorated with thousands of white roses and soft candlelight. Emma had insisted on keeping it relatively small, just close friends and family. But small for a billionaire sheikh still meant 200 guests, including several members of Middle Eastern royalty, prominent academics, and business leaders from around the world. But Emma only had eyes for one person. Khalid stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his dark eyes locked on her from the moment she appeared. As Emma walked down the aisle, she saw his expression transform awe, love, and something that looked suspiciously like tears. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "You're not so bad yourself," Emma whispered back. The ceremony was a blend of traditions, Western vows and Middle Eastern customs, with a special moment where Emma and Khalid signed their vows to each other in ASL, a tribute to Amira and the language that had brought them together. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," Khalid pulled Emma close and kissed her with such tenderness and passion that the entire room erupted in applause. As they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, Emma caught sight of someone standing at the back of the ballroom, Marcus Whitmore, looking haggard and bitter. He'd somehow gotten past security, and for a moment, Emma felt a flash of the old fear. But then Khalid's hand tightened on hers, and she looked up at her husband, her brilliant, protective, loving husband, and realized that Marcus had no power over her anymore. He was just a sad man who had tried to steal her light and failed. Emma smiled at Marcus, a smile of pure triumph and forgiveness, and then turned away. He wasn't worth another moment of her attention. The reception was magical, dancing, laughter, and speeches that made Emma cry happy tears. Amira gave a toast in sign language that Emma translated, talking about how Emma had given her a voice and given her son a heart. Khalid's best friend from Dubai told embarrassing stories about Khalid's teenage years, and Emma's former professor from Columbia, who had been one of the few to believe her during the plagiarism scandal, spoke about watching Emma reclaim her brilliance. But the best moment came late in the evening, when Khalid pulled Emma onto the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. As they swayed to the music, he leaned down and whispered, "I have a wedding present for you. Khalid, you've already given me too much. This is different." He pulled a document from his jacket pocket. "I've established the Emma Carter Foundation for Deaf Education and Research. $50 million in initial funding, with more to come. You'll direct it, decide how the money is spent, what research to fund, what programs to create. I want you to change the world, Emma, and I want to give you the resources to do it." Emma stared at him, unable to speak. $50 million, a foundation in her name, the ability to fund research, create programs, help countless people in the deaf community. "Why?" she finally whispered. "Because you saw my mother when no one else did. Because you believe that everyone deserves to be heard. Because you're going to do incredible things, and I want to be the person who makes that possible." Khalid cupped her face. "You gave me everything, Emma. Let me give you this." Emma kissed him, not caring that they were in the middle of a crowded dance floor, not caring that people were watching. "I love you," she said against his lips. "I love you so much." "I love you too, Dr. Al-Rashid." Emma pulled back, her eyes wide. "Dr. Al-Rashid, that's going to take some getting used to. You have the rest of our lives to practice." As they danced, surrounded by people who loved them, Emma thought about the journey that had brought her here. From invisible waitress to celebrated researcher. From broken and alone to loved and supported. From victim to victor. She thought about the moment Khalid and Amira had walked into Lajada, how she'd made the choice to be seen, to use her gifts, to risk being hurt again. That single moment of courage had changed everything. And now as she looked into her husband's eyes and felt his arms around her, as she saw Amira watching them with tears of joy, as she thought about the foundation that would bear her name and the research that would change lives, Emma understood something fundamental. Being invisible had felt safe. But being seen, truly seen and valued and loved, was worth every risk. "What are you thinking about?" Khalid asked softly. "I'm thinking about how grateful I am that your mother couldn't speak," Emma said, "and that I knew how to sign, and that you were arrogant enough to investigate me, and stubborn enough to fight for me." Khalid laughed. "I prefer to think of it as determined and devoted." "Arrogant and stubborn," Emma repeated, smiling. "Fine, but I'm your arrogant, stubborn husband now. You're stuck with me." "Good," Emma said, resting her head on his chest, "because I'm not letting you go." As the music played and the night stretched on, Emma closed her eyes and let herself feel the full weight of her happiness. She had everything she'd ever wanted: meaningful work, a loving family, a partner who believed in her unconditionally. But more than that, she had herself back. The brilliant, passionate, courageous woman she'd always been, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. Dr. Emma Carter Al-Rashid was ready to change the world. And with Khalid by her side and Amira cheering her on, there was nothing she couldn't do. The story that had begun with a simple act of kindness, signing to a lonely woman in a restaurant, had become a love story, a redemption story and a triumph story all at once, and it was just the beginning. The end.